Godot BootCamp lesson on universal authentication. We're going to start this lesson in the brainCloud API reference and investigate the authenticate universal request. Unlike an authenticate anonymous request, a few parameters must be supplied for an authenticate universal request. The first two parameters are pretty straightforward. They are user ID and password. The third parameter, however, is not as straightforward. It is called forceCreate. The forceCreate parameter tells the server that a new profile should be created on the server in the event that the user's account does not already exist. You can inspect the JSON example response. However, it's the exact same example response as the anonymous authentication lesson. Open Visual Studio Code and navigate to the network.cs file. Scroll down to the bottom above the output log method. Declare a private method called handle authentication success. This method takes in a string called response data and the authentication request completed delegate as the parameters. We'll call this method from the success lambda of every successful authentication request. In the body of the method, invoke the output log method and output the string authentication successful along with the contents of the response data string. Then, if the authentication request completed delegate is not null, it will be invoked. In the handle authentication anonymous method, delete the contents of the success callback lambda and invoke the handle authentication success method instead, passing in the response data and the authentication request completed delegate as the arguments. Below the authenticate anonymous method, declare a public method called authenticate universal. This method takes in the username and password along with the authentication delegates as parameters. In the body of the method, implement a success callback lambda. In the body of the lambda, invoke the handle authentication success method, passing in the response data and the authentication request completed delegate as arguments. Implement a failure callback lambda. In the body of the lambda, log an error message, and if the authentication request completed delegate is not null, it will be invoked. Make the authenticate universal brainCloud request, pass in the user ID, password, true to force create an account in the event that one does not already exist on the server, and also pass in the success and failure callback lambdas as arguments. Save the file, and then navigate to the universal login dialog.cs file. In this class, we need to declare a pair of private network authentication request delegates. These are being declared here so that when we show the universal dialog from the game, and then pass them onto the network class when the request is made. Implement a public method called set. This method will take in the network's authentication request delegates as the parameters. In the body of the method, assign the authentication request delegates to the member variables. In the onLogin button click method, delete the to-do comment. Then in this place, hide this dialog, show the connecting dialog, and invoke the network's authenticate universal method, passing in the user ID and password from the text fields, along with the authentication delegates as the arguments. Save the file and then navigate to the dialogmanager.cs file. Scroll down and find the show universal login dialog method. We need to modify the show universal login dialog's parameter list to take in the network's authentication delegates. In the body of the method, invoke the universal login dialog's set method, passing in the authentication delegates as the arguments. Save the file and then navigate to the game.cs file. Scroll down and find the handle authentication method. Delete the two highlighted statements. And in their place, invoke the dialog manager's show universal login dialog method, passing in the onAuthentication request completed method as the argument. Save the file and then compile the code. If the code compiled successfully, open the Godot editor. Run the game. Notice that the universal login dialog is displayed. Enter a user ID and a password. This is the first time that we are logging in with these credentials, so the server will create an account because the forceCreate flag was set to true. Click Login. We have now successfully authenticated with a universal identity. Reconnect authentication is the next lesson in the Godot BootCamp.